Good morning. God damn. Episode 6 of Vicious Whispers. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Mark Tullius, your host. And I'm fucking tired. It is like 6 in the morning. Had to wake up early to get my daughter ready for school. I feel so bad for her. She has to wake up only in 4th grade, but she wakes up like at 5:45, 5:40 to have to go to school. But she loves her school and she's doing it, so oh well, I'm up too. Might as well fucking get this recording in. I was gonna record this last night, but I was pretty beat up after my tattoo session. I generally do those Monday nights. If I can, I do it once a week. Although after every after 2 or 3 sessions, we usually take 1 week off. Just so it's not too much stress on the body. Because, it's not the most pleasant thing. But I'm digging it. One of the characters, the female character that's based off of my wife, she got some color done on her last night. It's looking pretty cool. But no tattoo talk yet. No fantasy novel talk yet. I was really hoping last night was going to be the day to switch projects. I've been busting my ass on Ain't No Messiah, but balancing that between, balancing the writing between family and other stuff, it takes a little bit longer. Plus, it's the final scene. I'm making sure this thing is right. I have to get it right how everyone dies. So yeah, been imagining a lot of death over and over, playing this scene in my head. But it is just about done. I got a lot of it finished last night. All I need is maybe the last page or two. So hopefully I will get through that today. Oh, before I forget, this episode we will be mainly talking about Unlocking the Cage. Last week I played Mutual Understanding, the short story. Definitely check that out if you didn't listen to it. Episode 5, which involves highly trained female participant going against an untrained male, and what I think could actually happen. So that was last week. And in case if you guys haven't heard it, if you haven't been over to Unlocking, which is my original podcast, which I'm still doing, I just put out episode 101. And on that one, you can get a good idea of, another side of me. Generally, I'm pretty upbeat. I'm pretty happy. On that one, I talk a little bit about a little depression that I went through. I didn't want people thinking it's a shit I deal with all the time or anything like that. Although even that, I don't know why I have to justify it. But yeah, it was had a little rough spell. But then I dealt with it. I talked with my son. I talked to my family about it. I don't know. It ended up being a good thing, and then I was able to share it on the podcast. Just letting people know. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel they might be the only one. They're going through some shit. I don't know. It always feels like it's just you. You're the one that's crazy. You're the one that's fucking depressed for no reason. You're the one feeling these kinds of things. So yeah, on that episode I talked about that. Plus I shared some sci-fi. I shared 26 Pills, which is taken from 25 Perfect Days plus 5 more dystopian nightmare. So if you dig that kind of stuff, definitely go back and check those episodes out. I think that series started on number 79 or so, and that is Unlocking. Also, if you guys like free shit, I know everyone does free shit, right? A couple of my books are free this week, the ebooks. Twisted Reunion is 99 cents for another week. Getting a lot of new people checking that shit out. Then what else do we have? We have Before Brightside. Whether or not you've read Brightside, you could check out that little short story. Really short. I have the audio for it too. I don't believe I have the rights to play it though. That might be an exclusive one. But it gets kind of dirty. It is the main character from Brightside, it is his first time having sex. So that was a fun one to write. Then we also have, let's see, Repackaged Presents is free. That's just 5 short stories. You could also find those in Twisted Reunion. And Try Not to Die #1. It's the only one that's out right now in that series. Try Not to Die at Grandma's House. That is also out. I think that's my highest rated book. It only has 11 reviews, but they're all solid. Everyone loved that one. So that's a book that both adults and teenagers can definitely dig. It's one of my few books that I'm okay letting younger kids, I'd say up until probably like 8 or so, 8 or 9. No bad language, no, I mean, there's still some kind of gruesome deaths, but it's no different than shit they're going to be seeing on TV probably. Especially if you're a shitty parent like I am. Like, yeah, sure, go ahead and watch the beheadings. They probably won't bother you that much. Good thing is my kids have not woke up screaming in the night from anything I have told them or let them watch. I think usually they just whimper. They just cry and fucking whimper under their covers. Because I said, do not yell. Mommy will get mad at me. But yep, no screaming in the night anymore. Oh, so I mentioned today's going to be about unlocking the cage. But before we do that, let's get into the question of the day. I can't say it's the Goodreads question of the day because I didn't get the shit from Goodreads because you guys have not been doing your job. I'm going to cut you some slack because maybe you're like, what the fuck is Goodreads? How do I get on it? How do I ask a question? All these things that would also prevent me from probably doing it. But if you do have questions, you could ask them on Goodreads. Follow me there. Leave reviews. You could find me on social media. Ask me the questions there. So if it's a question about a story, the process, fucking what kind of underwear I like to wear, who knows? Just go ahead and ask them. I'll try to answer. But today's question is, do you try to be more original or deliver to readers what they want? That's an easy one. I definitely try to be original. Well, at first I didn't even like that question because I'm not trying to be original, but I get what they're saying. I would much rather my stuff be original. I don't take into consideration what the reader wants. I think I do sometimes with like word choices, like, okay, I'm not going to use the word cunt, or I'm not going to use the word cock here, or I'm not going to use something that's going to jar the reader. I'm not going to do things to intentionally pull a reader out of a story. I'm going to be conscious of the reader, but as far as the creation of a story, no way. It's I don't know. I'm not gonna. And maybe that will. Maybe that's hindering my success. Who knows? But I'm not fucking doing this to. I don't know. I'm not doing this to make a ton of money. And hopefully all that shit's gonna happen. But that's not the game plan. And even the thought of molding your book so fucking more and more readers would like, so the average person would want to pick it up, and be able to digest it. That's not for me. I'm not looking for the average reader. I'm not, and not trying to say I'm special or anything else, but I want to write the story that's in my head. I have to write the story that's in my head. With Ain't No Messiah, there's tons of stuff in there that the average reader may not fucking appreciate. I'm probably going to throw a lot of people off, but I'm not worried about it. I was like, this is where the story's going. When shit starts going a little bit crazy in my head, I think I often look at it, I analyze it, I wonder whether or not it should be included, but if it feels true, if it feels like it's part of the story, then that's what's staying. Today we're going to be discussing Unlocking the Cage, which is my first nonfiction project. Maybe the only one, who knows? Because it wasn't nearly as much fun to write as fiction. And it took a long time. It was a lot of work. But with that was, I had a hard time. Probably one of the hardest times with that book was that question. I was like, okay, how do I put out this project? How do I put out this book and make it to where the readers are going to, really enjoy it, where it's going to be a fun, quick read, or something that they're not going to want to put down. How do I structure it? How do I have 340 fighters? Which ones do I put in? Which ones do I leave out? Should I do it by a subject grouping? Should I do it by, how do I do this book? But it came to what I felt was the best way to tell it. And so, yeah, again, it wasn't, some readers might find it boring. Some readers are going to love it. So, I don't know. If you're a writer, I would just say write what's in your head. Write what you want to write. Have a good editor that's going to challenge you and tell you, no, that's bullshit. But that's what I like about not belonging to, I don't have to listen to some publishing house telling me, oh, no, you can't write that scene. I don't have to listen to anyone saying, no, we're not going to include that fighter. Like, he doesn't have any fights. No one knows about him. He's not going to help the book any. I don't have to listen to any of that shit. I was like, it's my stuff. It's my story. I will tell it the way I want because I'm a spoiled little fucking kid. Sometimes. But in that regard, yeah, maybe I am. But I'm writing because I feel like I need to. I'm writing because I fucking love it. And the only way that would continue for me and not be a job is to write exactly what I want to write. So, yeah. So that is that. Definitely try to, try to stay original. Not bend to your demand. Sorry, motherfuckers. But you get what I give you, not what I think you want. And that's another problem we have too. I think we often think we know what the readers want, or what others want, just in general, just in life. We always think, oh, that person wants this, or that person doesn't like me, or this and that. We think we know what's in the other person's head. My novel Brightside tried to explore that. That's something that I always really dealt with. But yeah, we don't know what the other person is thinking. Unless you have the Thought Thief app, which is now out at least on Google Play. Yeah, go on Google Play, pick that shit up for free. It's my first app. My buddy Michael Coker helped me put that together. And with that, you can read people's minds. So just be careful, though. It's sure to piss off some people. It might even piss off you when you realize what they're thinking. And I believe that should be out on, hopefully, the, I don't even know what the iTunes store is called. Probably the iTunes store. That would make the most sense. But we submitted it to them, too. I know they're a little bit harder to get through, or they have a longer process checking their apps. But yeah, that shit is going to be out, and is out now on Google Play. All right. Now we can shift focus. And this is hard because I originally wanted this to be all about, originally it was going to be all my fiction. I wasn't even really going to talk nonfiction, but why not? This is part of me. It's actually a big part. I spent so much of my life, 5 years of my life working on this thing, which is a good chunk of change. And it wasn't all, I was doing other shit in between, working on other books as well, but this did take up a lot of my time. Just to give you an idea of the amount of time this project took, I'll go into this before anything else. So I went to 100 gyms in 23 states, 340 fighters interviewed, and a whole bunch of coaches and other individuals. But with those numbers are all really low. Those are the ones that I actually recorded. I talked to countless people on top of that. 143 days on the road. I trained 87 of those. Drove about 15,000 miles and flew about 30,000. And then all the hours watching the videos, trying to figure it out. It took a lot of work. But I'm incredibly grateful for the experience. It definitely changed me as a person. And that's a little bit of what we will take a look at today. I'm going to play the Unlocking the Cage, the prologue for you. It's narrated by T. Quillen. I've shared this on Unlocking the Cage, the Unlocking podcast, a couple times. So if you've heard this already, you can go ahead and jump 7 minutes into the future. Ooh, about 7.5 minutes. Go ahead and jump ahead. But this audiobook is not out yet. But but I did want to share T. Quillen's prologue. So this will give you an idea of who I was in 1999 when I was really asking this question of I was already wanting to know why people were doing MMA. Why was I doing MMA? So here it is. Here's the Unlocking the Cage prologue. We will discuss when we return.
January 10th, 1999. Sunday's my only day off. No bodyguarding, no bouncing, no running, sparring, or hitting the heavy bag. I'm recovering from a late night, stretched out on the floor of my sparsely furnished one-bedroom apartment, killing creatures on PlayStation. My cell phone rings in the kitchen. I'm not expecting any calls, so I don't answer it. The phone's beside the oatmeal and the protein powder. It's about the only food in the place. I don't recognize the number, but for some reason, I answer anyway. It's the promoter of a local no-holds-barred NHB show. On their last card, I'd managed to squeak by with a win, fortunate not to get matched against Rico Rodriguez or Tito Ortiz. I ask what I can do for him. You got anything going on today? Nothing until tonight. Want to do me a huge favor and make some money? I don't care about the favor, but I could use the cash. Doing what? How'd you like to fight? I could really use you. I laugh. Sorry, I'm afraid I can't. I gave it up. But you've been training. He'd talked to someone. Probably my old coach. I haven't rolled in like 2 months. Only been boxing, I tell him. Turning pro soon. That's great, he says, sounding way too happy. Come on, I got a guy from out of town who needs an opponent. He wants a shot at your belt. All the ref did was raise my hand. This was the first I'd heard of a belt. I promised my boxing coach I wouldn't fight in a cage again. Why's he gotta know? Come on, it's $200. $3 if you win. I don't want him thinking I'm chicken, but I can't take the fight. I've got a date at 7, I say, leaving out that I swore to my girlfriend I was done with the cage. Doors open at 5. I'll put you on first. You'll be fine. I look around my sorry apartment, searching for an excuse. Suddenly, I'm not so sure I want one. All I can come up with is, I don't have a cup. Not a problem. I'll have one for you. Just get down here as soon as you can. He'd have an answer for everything. It was either yes or no. I'm smart enough to know it'd be dumb to take the fight. I'm stupid enough to say, all right, I'll be there. Well, my day just got way more interesting. I fix a little food, gather my stuff, throw a pair of jeans and my button-down into a gym bag since I'll have to go straight to the date. In the car, I blast Slayer to block out my thoughts, jump on the freeway. I don't call my friends or brothers, even though I suppose it'd be nice to have a corner. I don't call my boxing coach to tell him I'm breaking his rule. I don't call my girlfriend to tell her I'm breaking hers too. Odds are she'll figure it out when she sees me. I don't care about my body, but hope my face doesn't get all messed up. That happened 5 months ago when I fought Bobby Hoffman at Extreme Challenge 20 in Iowa. The first 11 minutes of the fight were fine, but the last 50 seconds hadn't been fun. Hammer fist after hammer fist straight to the face, making it so that everyone on that flight knew I got my ass kicked. My mom cried when she saw me. But it didn't really hurt. Bruises fade and broken noses heal, so no big deal. That's not how I should be thinking, though. I have to stay positive. I got lucky and won my last 2 fights. Barely took any punishment. Maybe this guy wouldn't be any good. Maybe the boxing had improved my striking. Shit, maybe I could actually win. The parking lot is already getting full. This building looks far better than the dirty warehouse they'd thrown a cage in for the last event. I'm not sure if the fight is legal, but that's not a real concern. The truth is, I wish the cops would show up and shut it down, but that they'd hurry up and do it in the next half hour. Inside, I find the promoter, throw on the cup and a pair of tight shorts. Just as he promised, I'd be up in the first 20 minutes. All the other fighters are with friends or teammates. I find a quiet corner and start to stretch. I don't see any heavyweights around. Maybe my guy won't show. I'm new to NHB. With 5 fights in my 1 year of training, I've never been first on a card. As one of the bigger guys, I'm usually one of the last, sitting in the back and watching guys come back bloodied and broken. Not today. I've got 15 minutes. The static stretching isn't exactly warming me up, so I do a dozen up-downs. I'm shocked at how winded I get. Not good. The team I've been with for my last 3 fights has guys on the card. Most of them are cool with me and understand why I gave up NHB for boxing. I thought my ex-coach hadn't been happy with my decision, but he doesn't mention it when he walks over. He even offers to work my corner and tells my old teammates to warm me up. Holy shit, I'm in trouble. What would have been easy drills just wiped me out. The guys ask if I've been training at all, if I'm ready. I never should have answered the phone. Shouldn't have taken the fight. But I did, so none of that matters. I've got 10 minutes to calm my heart rate and get my head straight. My buddy points out a guy shooting double-leg takedowns. He's easily just as big and strong as I am, so there goes any advantage I might have had. He's wearing wrestling shoes. His shadow boxing's better than mine. God damn it. I tell the guys I'm warm enough, and I walk to the water fountain. I grab a drink, tell myself to stop being a little bitch. It's just a fight. No different from what would happen any night at work. But those guys are usually drunk and not trained athletes. They call us to the cage. I wonder what kind of advice I'll get from my corner. I feel like a complete coward when I tell my old coach. I don't give a shit about this fight. Throw in that towel if I'm getting my ass kicked. I'm not even supposed to be here. He says sure thing, but I question if he will. I get in the cage, try to look tough, like I belong there. The Rocky music in the background isn't helping.
The announcer says Tim Lasik is undefeated.
An all-American wrestler. But my hearing's all fuzzy. All I know is he looks solid and determined. He's staring right through me. The cage door clangs shut. The lock slides into place. The voice in my head drowns out everything else. What the hell is wrong with me?
Alright, so what the hell is wrong with me? And that's an example of somewhere where I did think about the reader because I really want to write what the fuck is wrong with me. Because that was the thought that was in my head, like, what the fuck am I doing? That might have been the actual thought, but because this shit is occurred 18 years ago and my memory fucking is terrible, this is a recollection, the best I could do of remembering what it was like. I remember a lot of that day, or at least I believe I do. I don't know how much we can ever really trust our memories, but what was cool is Tim Lasik, my opponent for this fight, him and I became really good friends. I contacted him after watching on this first trip. I was with my cousin Rob. I think I might even talk about it in the first chapter, I'm not sure. And he had me watch the video. He watched the fight. He was up on YouTube, my fight against Tim. And where Tim beats me, I forget, 7 minutes in, 8 minutes in. But he definitely, I had a couple good things, but he handled me. He won the fight for sure. I wanted out of there. And but I never wanted to watch it because I knew I lost. I didn't want to watch me lose again. But my cousin made me watch it, and he made me see it for what it was. It was a competition, and I did fairly decent. And after I found out, so I contacted Tim. I ended up staying at his house. That's, I think, chapter 9 or so. I'm not sure exactly what chapter. It's in here. It's in the book. But it definitely helped me. He made me see. He helped me see I shouldn't be so hard on myself. That I shouldn't, dwell on failures and be like, oh, well, I don't want to, I don't want to even acknowledge that because I didn't fucking win. So that was super helpful. So thank you, Rob Levesque, for that. But what else? And my good friend Anthony, he was just talking to me about this, he'd only read the prologue, or while reading the prologue, he was like, dude, he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you take that fight? But that question, I mean, that is the question that so many fighters ask themselves. So many people that I interviewed, they would often joke about it, saying, oh, we must be crazy to do this. And also seeing that, although they were joking about it, I think a lot of them kind of, maybe felt that way, that there's something different about them, that something's off, because they want to compete. I was talking to a guy in a store yesterday, and we were talking about fighting, and he's like, why would guys do it? And we were talking about the amount of pay they receive, like the average. The average payday of these 340 fighters, which went from Dominic Cruz all the way to low-level amateur guys, very low. And even if I'm just looking at all the pros, take the amateurs out, the average pay is super low. You do see the huge paydays now, Conor McGregor and all those kinds of guys, but generally, for the average person, until they break out, until they get into a UFC type situation where they can make $50,000 for a fight of the night, plus, and their career can take off, you're not looking at a lot of money. But a lot of these guys aren't necessarily doing it for the money. The money is a nice little bonus, and a lot of them may not know why. But I don't want to give away too much about the book. So let's discuss. So that chapter, I'm taking you back to, let's see, I said it was 1999. So I was 27 at the time there. Definitely not a, I don't know. When I first was thinking about the book, I knew that's where it started, because I knew that's when that desire to really understand myself, to really try to answer the question that I never could. Why do you fight? That's when that came. Then chapter 1 starts January 14th, 2012. A lot had changed in 13 years since the LASIK fight. I got married, divorced, married again, and became a stay-at-home dad about to launch my career as an author. In August, I would turn 40, an age I never imagined I'd reach. Overall, I was content with how my life had played out and considered myself very fortunate. My daughter was 3 at the time, Olivia, and she was a big reason why so I think I'll just pop in and out of maybe the first couple chapters today, give you an idea and help me remember what it was all about. But yeah, so in this first chapter, so 2012 is when I began this. It was about January. I was at my buddy's house, and I was watching a UFC over there, and I really wasn't a huge fan of MMA. I mean, I would watch it if I was with friends, but I kind of fell off. It just seemed like there were fights all the time. I didn't like the way it was portrayed. I didn't like being around other people when they're calling for blood and knockouts, especially if they'd never fucking even trained before or have any idea what's going on in the fight. But with that, I remember I wasn't even like watching the fights. I was out playing with the kids. All the adults were inside watching the fight. I came inside, was watching it. One of the wives was asking, she's like, I can't believe you ever did this. I was like, well, I didn't do it at this kind of stage. I never got into the UFC. I was actually, I think it was about a week out from UFC 26 when I separated my collarbone. So I was bummed about that I had to pull out of that fight. But it was probably for the best because I would have got fucking smashed. I was constantly putting myself into fights against much more experienced people, generally. And I don't know, I liked being the underdog. I think part of it too, the whole thing helped me realize, and it's something I still do with jiu-jitsu. I would much rather go against a tougher guy that's probably going to beat me than me going against a guy that I know I should beat. May not make a lot of sense, but it's something I've always dealt with. And part of it is, I'm sure, an excuse, because if I lose against this guy who's way better, then I have an excuse for losing. So I'm starting this project at 40 years old, just about to be 40. I mentioned I never thought I would reach that age. I think the age I thought I would reach was 24. For whatever reason, that was a number in my head. I didn't know if I would even make it that long. I was very, very self-destructive. I mean, shit, I had suicidal thoughts most of my life. Probably up until I started this project, I was dealing with a lot of that stuff. This project made me really look at that stuff. And one way I did it was I decided to start this project in Rhode Island because I realized, well, there were a couple reasons why. It's like, okay, I live in California. Why would someone that has access to the best, well, I shouldn't say the best, but lots of the best MMA schools or tons of MMA schools around them, why would I start somewhere like Rhode Island where there are very few schools in New England where there just aren't nearly as many? But a big reason was to see whether or not I really want to do it, but also so I could meet with a professor from Brown to talk about the project. Because my first trip was just to kind of feel things out, to see whether or not I wanted to invest the time, the money, the energy into answering this question. I didn't know whether or not fighters would I didn't know whether or not fighters would respond to me. I didn't know if they would be interested. And another thing I realized on this trip was I had that voice in my head saying, you know, who the fuck am I? Who am I to do this project? You know, I was never a good fighter, so why should I do this? I wasn't following fighting. I wasn't really an MMA fan, so why should I do this? I've never written nonfiction, so what makes me think I could write nonfiction? I'd never conducted an interview. What makes me think I could conduct an interview? So I had all this stuff in my head, but the first trip I went to Rhode Island, and it made me take a look at who I was back at that age. I went to school at Brown University, my junior and senior year of college. That's where I graduated from. Played football there, although my senior year sucked. I had a lot of injuries. But going back there reminded me of who I was back then. I had blocked out a lot of that shit. I forgot what a fucking angry, miserable little shit I was. Just mad at the world, mad at myself, a lot of anger. So after going back there and experiencing that and hitting that flood of emotions, returning to a school, you know, after 20 years, that helped. That helped help ground me. It's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of who I was. I can't deny those things as much as I don't like them. That's definitely who I was. So that helped me out. So I went back there. What else? I'm just gonna pull some of this. I did meet with one of the professors from Brown. I met he's now a very good friend of mine. One of my best friends, Carl Dominy. He was at Brown. He's working. I think he was. I forget his actual title. I think we fixed it in the book. Let's see. What was he? Carl Dominy, the academic coordinator. I called Brown Sociology Department hoping to find a professor that might be able to give me some guidance, that might be able to tell me a little bit about how I should conduct the project. Someone that can tell me that it was even a worthwhile project. But I honestly thought they were going to laugh me off the phone. Fortunately, it was Carl who answered the phone, and he was a big MMA fan. He really liked the idea. He put me in touch with 2 different professors that, and on the first trip I met one of them. And it was super helpful. Oh, and another thing that happened prior to that trip was I wanted to see what else had been written about the sport. And when I go on Amazon, a couple of clicks, I see that Sam Sheridan who wrote The Fighter's Heart and The Fighter's Mind. I might be messing up those titles. And so I went ahead and ordered his books. I read them probably within the first week I had them to see whether, you know, how close it was to what I wanted to do. And I was a little concerned, but I wrote him a email. He responded right away. He even met me for lunch. He went out of his way to meet up, and he gave me all kinds of good advice. He told me not to worry about our books being similar. He was telling me We discussed whether or not I should try to train with the guys, if that would help. All these different things. So that was a huge confidence builder. So thank you, Sam. If you guys have not read his work, I definitely recommend it. I really enjoyed his disaster diaries. It blended a little bit of his fiction with nonfiction. He went and looked at all these different scenarios. He learned about survival, how to survive disasters. And yeah, it seems like it would be a fun little project. I'm going to do that one next and copy him again. I'm not. All right. So I go to Brown. I'm ready to go. In the very first day I get there, it's fucking raining. It's miserable. I'm tired. I took a red eye, didn't sleep. And I get there. I get to the first gym, and it is a small gym, mainly jiu-jitsu. The guys there don't have very much experience. They were all very nice. It was a Black Diamond Mixed Martial Arts. But it made me realize that wasn't what I wanted, and it was fucking pretty depressing. I was like, oh shit. I was like, this is how it's starting out, and I have 16 more days, and this is such a waste. So I was very tempted to say fuck it right there. That was my old answer to any kind of obstacle would be fuck it. I would get upset, I would beat myself up, and I would say fuck it. But this, I was like, no, I can't. So the next day I got, I did something that I should have already done. I think because I wasn't sure whether or not, my level of commitment, I don't know. I just wasn't, I didn't do the research. I didn't set up that many schools ahead of time. I was like, well, we'll see how it goes. I'll figure it out as we go. So the next day I just had to get on the phone. I got on the internet. I found other schools. I found Tri-Force MMA in Pawtucket. And I went down there and I realized, I was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. It was, two brothers, Pete and Keith Jeffrey. The first night I was there, they were doing stand-up practice. And so I went ahead and joined them for a little bit, as maybe the first half of the class. And it was fun, but I realized just how bad a shape I was. And a couple months prior to me leaving on this trip, I was doing a little bit of working out. I was trying to get in shape, but I kept having injuries, and I was 40 years old, or just about to be 40, probably like 250 or so, pretty heavy. Hadn't done shit in 8 years since I blew my Achilles tendon, and had given up fighting. That wasn't why I wasn't doing shit. I was just lazy and a dad, and put on a lot of weight. So when I was at Tri-Force, it was tough even getting through the beginning. Maybe who knows how long I did, 20 or 30 minutes. But it definitely pushed me. And then when it was time to spar, instead of continuing, I grabbed my camera and started taking pictures. And it was cool because then I was able to focus on everyone that was in there. And then after that, I went ahead and the practice ended pretty late. But when I asked guys if they wanted to do interviews, I had, I think, 5 or 6 guys line up. And it was awesome. But then I realized I needed more time than that per interview because I couldn't go that deep. But there's some cool ones in there. In the book, I believe I only mentioned one of the interviews from that first night. But I met a lot of great guys. 5 different guys got in front of the camera. Some of them were probably even more nervous than I was. Some of them hadn't done an interview before. A couple of them had. But it was, that got me motivated. That got me inspired. It made me realize that these guys did care, that I could relate to fighters. And I was kind of pumped about it. Oh, another reason I didn't spar with those guys too was the next day I was able to do a reading at Brown for Brightside. And so that was a lot of fun. The next day I went back to Tri-Force and I did a class with Keith Jeffrey. I just trying to make it through his warm-up pretty much wiped me out. But it was awesome. And then we did some I think it was just jiu-jitsu that morning. It was no-gi jiu-jitsu. And learned some really cool stuff. But then I heard them talking about there was going to be a NAGA competition on Saturday morning. I think this is on Friday. So the very next day, there's going to be a competition. That night, I'm supposed to go to Cage Titans in, where is it? Plymouth, in Plymouth, Massachusetts. A fight that they have out there. But I didn't have anything scheduled for the morning, so instead of trying to find a gym, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go with the flow. That was my whole new approach I was trying to do, where if I heard something, I would just go with it. I was like, okay, it must be, you know, these guys wouldn't have been talking about it. I wouldn't have overheard it if it wasn't a smart idea. So yeah, there's going to be tons of fighters there probably. Let's just take all of my stuff and we'll go... I'll go and try to do interviews at NAGA. And then I also thought, I was like, well, I might as well compete too while I'm there because, you know, why not? And like a fucking dumb shit, I decided, well, I read the rules. It talks about how many years of experience you have and not to sandbag and blah, 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 blah. And I took it literally, thinking about how much experience I had. And I was like, okay, fuck it. I'll just go into the experts. And again, if I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose to someone that's really good. But I had absolutely no reason to be in there. And I got destroyed. I had 3 matches and they all destroyed me. I think my second to last one, I went against Matt Santos, who has an academy out there. If I had done my research, I would have gone and interviewed Matt. I would have gone to his school first. But I didn't, but I did get to compete against him, and he put me right away into a guillotine, and I popped my ribs, and it was painful. I tried doing one more match, and it just went out a little bit more, and it sucked. And so I took off. We had to drive straight to Plymouth, I think I don't even know if I showered. I'm kind of a nasty fuck sometimes. But my ribs were killing me. But luckily, my cousin, Rob Levesque, he drove all the way there. And he was able to, and he was my cameraman for this fight. And the fights took like 6 hours. So I'm in fucking tons of pain. 6 hours long. Some of the fights were awesome, but it was a super long card. I think the last fight was almost going to be on at midnight. I don't know, like 11 o'clock. But I was fucking pretty much done. Ready to leave. But it's the main fight with... Tateki Matsuda, who is from Sityodtong, and a guy I'd never heard of, Johnny Campbell, from South Shore Sportsfighting, SSSF. And but that fight blew me away. It was an amazing fight. It made me realize that fight and the whole event in general just made me realize, okay, I do have an interest in MMA. I can't deny it. Although I realized that part of me didn't like seeing guys get fucked up. I was also pumped up about the knockouts. I enjoyed seeing the exchange, so yeah, I would say less than a week. So I end chapter 2 saying less than a week into the project and I'd once again become a fan of the sport. And I don't know if that is completely true. Well, I guess I was a fan. What level fan? I didn't know, but there was definitely an attraction to it. I wanted to see more fights. I wanted to talk with more fighters, and so yeah, that's what I did. So on Monday, I went down to South Shore Sportsfighting in Norwell, Massachusetts, where Johnny trained. And so I had a feeling he wouldn't be in, but I had some awesome interviews. One of the ones that's in the book is Bill Mahoney, the owner or co-owner and head coach. He really stood out. Very interesting guy. If you guys, you can check these videos out on YouTube. A majority of them are out there. If you go to my YouTube page, I think I have 200, 250. I don't know how many different MMA interviews I have, but I believe Bill's is probably on there. But yeah, definitely an interesting guy. And besides being able to see his school, talk with his guys, which were a little bit different than the Rhode Island guys, a little bit of a different feel. He gave me the number for Johnny, and I made my first house call. I think the next day I went to Johnny's house, and where he lived with his parents, and I was able to do the interview in a nice, quiet place where no one else was watching, no one else was bothering us. There wasn't a buzzer going on, because the sound quality on my first interviews was pretty fucking terrible. Not only did I not have a good mic, but trying to do it in a gym setting made it difficult, and trying to do it with other people watching also made it a little bit difficult, because I'm aware of those people that are listening to me, and the person that is being interviewed is aware of them as well, and so they might be modifying what they would say. They may not want to claim certain things, or they may have a persona that they're trying to keep. But with Johnny, it was just him. It was just the two of us, and it was awesome. It was a great experience. Besides all the fighting stuff, and besides being able to see where he actually grew up, which is huge because he came from upper middle class, I was able to talk to him like, okay, well, how are your parents looking at you for doing this? And another cool thing with Johnny, we shared a lot of similarities, the way we handled our anger, the way we were trying to develop our mind. He's much younger than me, but I was very impressed with the way he looked at the world and his philosophy. And he turned me on to a book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, which generally when people recommend books, I don't know. I generally am a hater. I think like, I don't need that. I wasn't going to read any nonfiction, but I did appreciate what he was telling me, and so I went and picked up the book. I ordered it right away, and on my trips, I was reading it, and it did make a difference. It definitely helped me be more present, and that was something that he pointed out was why he enjoyed fighting so much, because it puts you right in the moment where nothing else matters. Like, you can't be thinking about other shit while you're in the middle of a fight. It's that moment. It's like, okay, I feel alive. This is all that matters right now. My bills don't matter. My family doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. Like, if I think about anything else, I'm gonna get fucking punched in the head. I'm gonna get knocked out. And Johnny wasn't the only one to mention that, but he was probably one of the first to really help explain that and make me understand that, and to point out this book that would help me appreciate that throughout my life without having to fight, without being in those circumstances, about just not worrying about the future or thinking about the past, but just trying to stay in the moment. Not an easy thing to do, but the more you do it, the better it is. After that, then that night I went to Joe Lauzon's gym at NAGA. Going to NAGA ended up being a great thing because I did meet a lot of different fighters. I met Matt Perry, who was a fighter, also I think he teaches 8th grade science, and I'm also possibly working on a Try Not to Die with him. I'm not sure how far along he is on that idea. It's tough when you got a full-time job, but I met Matt. He told me that he trained at Joe Lauzon's gym, so I was pumped when Matt sent him a text, asked him if I could come down. And the thing that NAGA gave me was, because my ribs were busted up, I couldn't even worry about training. I couldn't worry about that part of it. I was like, okay, I just have to go in, I could take pictures, and I could do interviews. And at Lauzon's, it was awesome because Chris Palmquist, who was a former fighter, but he's also one of the coaches there, he would just send me fighters. He understood what I wanted to do. He thought it was cool, and so he sent me fighters during their workouts, throughout the workout, and so that's when they were doing their interviews. Some of them were, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. Some of them were a little bit longer. Had a lot of awesome ones. And then at the very end, I have, just an awesome night. And then Joe was finished. He's like, do you want to talk to me too? And I hadn't asked him because, honestly, I figured that someone like him had probably already told his story so many times. He's already been in so many UFC fights. Like, what am I going to get out of him that he hasn't already shared? But I thought that was super cool of him to ask. So we started his interview, and it was going great for the first couple minutes. And then my camera shut off. and I couldn't figure out why. But then it said my memory card was full, and then I realized I didn't have another memory card because I didn't even ever consider that. I don't know. I just, like I mentioned before, I had never done interviews. I'd never filmed anything before. I didn't have any concept of how big memory cards were, all this shit. But Joe was super cool, and he told me, he's like, well, if you could do it tomorrow, he's like, I'll show up early. So I went to Best Buy, got some memory cards, and I was there the next morning early. It was an awesome interview. I taped my ribs up because Joe is an amazing jiu-jitsu expert. I wanted to be able to roll with him and the team. So I taped my ribs. I think I got through maybe a round or two, and then I was just in so much pain. It wasn't going to work. So I gave that up. So I think I had maybe like 7 or 8 interviews there at Lauzon's. Another one that was very powerful was Andy Aiello. I really enjoy Andy, but he talked about being an alcoholic. He had been adopted and had just a lot of anger issues going into college. He stepped away from fighting. He was being successful, I believe, at the amateur level, and then he started partying too much and he became an alcoholic. Had to go into a 12-step program to pull himself out. Fighting definitely helped him get out of it, and now it's his focus. So it was a powerful interview. So after all that, I was ready to move on to the rest of the trip. Let's see. All right, here's the last chapter. Here's the last couple paragraphs. I took photos the rest of practice and interviewed 2 more guys, bringing me up to 22 fighters and 1 coach. Not a bad start. I gathered my stuff and hit the road for a 3-hour drive to Amherst, Massachusetts, on the other side of the state. As I drove, I considered all the different people I talked to, searched for similarities among them and with myself. It wasn't going to be easy to figure out all the various reasons people fight, but I was going to enjoy doing it. Although I missed my family, I was no longer worried I was wasting my time. The sport I turned away from was once again exciting to watch, and the fighters I met were some of the kindest, most generous, and respectful people I'd come across. I was excited that I had recorded the interviews, not because I'd forget what they said, but so I could show others who they were. All right. So that's the first 3 chapters and the prologue of Unlocking the Cage, which is out now on Kindle. If you have read it, please leave a review. Reviews are huge, especially with a book like this. Definitely need those. But yeah, you can pick that up, and then the hardcover will be available to order on Amazon on December 5th. So not too far away. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this, a little bit of the nonfiction. I am looking forward to getting back into sharing some fiction with you guys. But I think we'll stay with Unlocking the Cage for another week or 2. That gives a little insight into who I was back then, who I was when I started this project. And throughout the course of the book, I have to really take a look at, who I was when I was fighting, the issues that I still have and had and still have. So yeah, a lot of introspection, trying to figure myself out, trying to compare my answers to the fighters' answers, trying to see, what the fuck was wrong with me, what the fuck was wrong with them, realizing that, there doesn't have to be something wrong with you in order to want to fight, in order to want to compete. But we'll go into all that shit and more on next week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening to Vicious Whispers with me, Mark Tullius. Be sure to stick around next week. We'll do some more Unlocking the Cage. I believe next week and the following week. And then the week after that, I found a short story that has not been released yet. It was, I had it recorded. It's called The Mirror. It was published in a small magazine, which probably hardly anyone read. So yeah, probably very few people have read this story. It's a shorter one. But I had T. Quell narrate it because I was considering putting it with the Somber Stroll audiobook. But because it was third person and not first person, I just thought it didn't fit. But I will be sharing that relatively soon, so I think that'll be in a couple weeks. But if you guys want to hear more, you can always check out Unlocking. That new podcast will probably be up on Thursday or Friday. Not sure. Because I'm trying to do two, it makes it a little more difficult. Alright guys, I've got some work to do. I'm going to be on a podcast here shortly, The Grueling Truth. I'm not sure what day that will be put out, but we will be talking more Unlocking the Cage. Yay, 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 yay. Alright guys, go check that shit out. But more importantly, have a fucking awesome week. Yeah, remember, it could be your last, so enjoy it. Alright guys, I will talk to you later. Peace.